Hey friends, welcome to the Taking Your Next Step podcast from Collegians for Christ. Through each episode, we will journey together focusing on becoming better followers of Jesus. If you are eager, like I am, to follow Jesus Christ, then take your next step now by joining us in today's episode. Real quick, before we jump into our episode, just want to give you a quick heads up about the upcoming college and career retreat on February 10th through the 11th in Greenville, North Carolina. We are so excited that this event is getting so much closer now, that we're getting close to the holidays. And as soon as we flip over from New Year's, it'll be almost basically a month away. But it's going to be a great time, a Friday night, Saturday during the day. We're going to have some main preaching sessions. We'll have some relevant breakout sessions. We'll have some God-infused time in small groups, a fun group activity, delicious food. We'll have a hot topic Q&A, just a great time together to really be challenged, to be encouraged, and to be able to grow in your faith, to be able to connect with other like-minded people that are your age. We've got some young adult speakers coming in. Zach Campbell will be with us, Lauren Hickman. My wife and myself will also be speaking. And for the college and career leaders that would be bringing their groups, or if you just want to come, even if you're not bringing a group, we've got some sessions that'll be tailored specific for you to equip you and encourage you in building and growing an effective young adult and college ministry. So we'd love to see you there. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. You can get all the information and register at cfcretreats.com. That's cfcretreats.com. And we hope to see you then. So let's jump into our last episode on this building block of evangelism. I can get passionate about evangelism, but also very scared when I talk about evangelism. You say, why? I'm passionate about it because it's the last command of Jesus Christ. It is so very important. And because someone was obedient to that command, they knocked on my apartment door. They introduced themselves, a young couple, and they asked me a question nobody had ever asked me and a question I could not answer. If you died today, where would you go? And long story short, because someone took the building block of evangelism seriously, they asked if they could just take a few moments to share with me about Jesus Christ and how I could know that I had eternal life. And they did that. And long story short, right there in my apartment, I bowed my head and accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. And it took me about a year to get my life cleaned up and finally get involved in church. But it's because of that couple that said, okay, we're going to take evangelism serious. We're going to be intentional about it. We're going to have a plan that we evidently do periodically, frequently, consistently to engage people with the gospel. And so I'm forever grateful of that. And so that's why I get passionate about evangelism. And I imagine you came to Jesus Christ through whether it's a family member, a pastor, a teacher, or someone knocking on your door, someone you going to Bible study on a college campus, whatever it is, someone was intentional about teaching, preaching, witnessing, and going outside of the church doors to get people and either reach them there or to bring them back into the church so they could be reached. And then I get fearful because it's me engaging with other people. And sometimes these other people may have no interest in Jesus Christ. They may have no interest in the Bible. They may have actually a distaste, an anger towards God or Jesus or something that happened to them because of a supposed Christian or a Christian. And so fear comes in and it kind of hinders us or kind of prohibits us from being all in. You know, I'm sure if I asked most Christians, would you really, if you wanted to be, would you want to be all in with the gospel and evangelism? And most people would say, yes, I do, because I see how important it is. But then it's like going from that step to actually making it happen can be difficult. So we want to talk just some ideas, practically speaking. Each one of these building blocks we've tried to be very practical on, and we try to take one episode just to say, here's some ideas, here's some thoughts about how you could implement it Sunday through Saturday, wherever you're at, wherever God has placed you. So we want to talk about that. So let me tell you three things, or say to you three things that we'll talk about. One is this: be intentional. Then secondly, be invested. And then thirdly, be the instrument. Okay, we've talked much on our podcast that nothing happens by accident. I've said many times through our episodes, we have to be intentional. And so as you think about the application of evangelism, you're going to have to be intentional. It's just not going to happen by accident. You walking up to someone, or you talking to that coworker, or you with the classmate, dorm mate, whoever it is, there are some situations where they will ask you questions and kind of bring it up because they're curious. But the vast majority of the situations, you're going to have to be on the intentional offense to try to get them to think, try to get them to where you can engage them in conversation. Because sometimes people just don't know they need to be looking for Jesus. But Jesus is using you, and we'll talk about it, as the instrument to reach other people. You see, I wasn't looking for God. I wasn't looking for Jesus. I had heard a little bit about him, but had no idea how Christmas and Easter even connected and even what they had to do with the whole thing. I knew Jesus had died on some cross, but I didn't know why. I thought it was just some historical myth. I just didn't put it all together. And so I wasn't searching or seeking for him, but because someone was intentional with evangelism, with the gospel, they came to me and shared with me what I needed, though I didn't know I needed it. And so you're going to have to be intentional. You see, Jesus told us what to do and how to do it, but it's up to us to make that happen. So you're going to have to do what? Schedule it. Some of you only can operate via a schedule. That's the way I operate. And if a lot of times if it doesn't get scheduled, it'll get dismissed, it'll get forgotten. I may get to it, but I've got appointments. I've got certain things I do throughout the week that I write down on a planner. Some people are handwritten. Some people are on just a scratched piece of paper. Some of you use your phone and technology. Whatever it is, if you do not schedule it, or at least write in or begin to think, okay, maybe it's Sally at work. I'm just going to write her name down at the beginning of the week. And this is who I'm going to be intentional with, praying for, and trying to open up conversation. You see, just because you schedule it doesn't mean the door might swing open. But if you're not scheduling it, you're not even going to be thinking about probably engaging Sally. Now, some people are just going to be very evangelistic minded. They're going to be looking for you. Maybe you've met people like that. Every single person they're talking to, they're thinking that way. And I think that's great. Why? Because they've scheduled it in their mind every single day. That's the difference. They said, I'm going to be intentional with every single person I meet because I'm taking this command personally, and it is my job, it's my duty to find out everyone that God brings into my sphere of influence, whether they're a believer or not. And if they're not, I need to share the gospel with them. You say, what's the difference? They've already scheduled it in their mind every single day. So schedule it. Maybe you just want to write their name down. Maybe you want to take a day of the week and you want to engage in some type of ministry your church has. I remember when I was coming along early on and I had gotten saved and I learned about a gospel tract. And I would go during my lunch break and I would go and pass out gospel tracts at various parking lots. That was a way for me to be intentional. I did it 1 to 2 days a week. I would take various different tracts and just go hand them out to people. I didn't really know fully how to engage someone in the gospel, but I at least knew how to pass out a gospel tract to say, hey, let me just leave you with this. Some gospel tracts are very easy to leave. Hey, it has a question on it, has a football schedule, whatever it is, and you can just pass those out. Some of those you can just leave with people. Hey, you mind if I hand you this? Could I leave this with you today? It has some good news on it. Whatever you want to say. Hey, this invitation to our church. Whatever it is, just you can do that, right? So invite people to a Bible study at church, pass out a gospel tract, maybe schedule a time to go knock on doors if your church does that. I know some people hate that. Some people love it. But no, if you go, more than likely you can just go and watch. But I will say this, that's how I came to know Jesus Christ as my Savior. So I do really enjoy doing it that way. But I know some people don't like talking to complete strangers. But you can go as a silent partner and watch. But I think the good thing about that is, and especially if you have a college campus in your town and you go knock on those apartment doors, you'll have a whole lot of conversation and experience and opportunities to engage people with the gospel, and you'll learn so much so quick about how to communicate, answer questions, and so forth. But then I think next, if I was to say in this under intentional, is just be willing to ask and engage friends, family, classmates, roommates, and coworkers. We're going to talk on our next episode kind of about how to share the gospel, some steps we can take to turn that conversation. I think that's the hard part, right? We're going to be intentional. Thanksgiving's coming up, Christmas, we're going to be around family, cousins, we're going to be at coworkers with different parties and stuff, but you're around a lot of people, and maybe there's some people you're not 100% sure if they died today where they would go. Maybe you think they're a Christian, but you're not sure. Maybe there's some people you just know they're not a Christian. You're going to have to be willing and intentional. Maybe that's where you write their name down on your schedule for that week to say, I'm somehow going to pray God will give me an open door with Bob this week. And as I talk to him, maybe try to find some time in the break room or after class and just try to strike up some casual conversation. And maybe it stays there, but that casual conversation's for the purpose of what? For you eventually getting to the gospel. Maybe that conversation will allow you to get to the gospel. And you can flip it to a spiritual conversation. We're going to talk about that on our next episode, how to flip the conversation completely to a spiritual conversation without being confrontational. We're going to talk about that in our next episode. But be intentional. So think about those you're around and consider which ones are believers and which ones are not. And just be intentional, whether you schedule a time, you get involved in a ministry your church has, you pioneer a ministry. But weekly, I would say weekly, bi-weekly, have some type of intentional time where you are engaging people through evangelism. And then secondly, be invested. You and I have to understand the urgency involved in this command. You understand evangelism is the main focus and work of Christianity. Now, as we are believers, we are to glorify God. How do we do that? We glorify God by being obedient, by worshiping Him. How can we be obedient and worship Him? We're obedient to the last command of Jesus Christ, the most important command that He gave to His disciples, to go into all the world and preach the gospel. As we do that, we're worshiping God and we are glorifying God. We're fulfilling what we were created for. You see, everything we do as far as church work and ministry should be viewed through the lens of evangelism. Okay, if I'm in this children's ministry, if I'm in this nursing home ministry, if I'm in the nursery, how can I be evangelistic? You say, well, they're just little babies, but what about the parents that are coming in? The children's ministry, what about those children that are coming into your Sunday school class or whatever it is? Look through the lens. It's not just a club meeting. It's not just a weekly meeting where you're just going to gather kids and babysit them. No, look through the eyes of evangelism. How can I get the gospel to these kids? And how can I get these kids to bring in more kids? And then what is my church doing out in the community that I could get really involved in reaching people in the homeless community, reaching people on the college campus, reaching people in a nursing home, reaching people in various different communities in our community, politics and so forth. And so as such, if everything we do should be viewed through the lens of evangelism, we should invest time and energy into it. And so are you invested into evangelism? Are you being intentional? Is there a scheduled, purposeful time? Are you invested in it? Or is it just something maybe you've put to the side? I can be honest, it happens through seasons of life where it'll get shifted to the side because the busyness of life, the burdens of life will begin to cloud it out. And so we want to be invested, but then lastly here, we want to be the instrument. You have to be personally involved in the command. This is what God has chosen. He could have done it any other way, and maybe I think, man, God, you could have come up with a better way. But God uses you and God uses me as the instruments to reach other people with the gospel. So are you being the instrument that God desires for you to be? Are you being the instrument that God created you to be? Are you being an instrument that God can use? Or are you being an instrument that God cannot use? You think about a musical instrument that works and it makes a beautiful sound if someone knows how to play it. But think about a trumpet maybe with a valve stuck. It won't work, and you can't make the notes sound good. It can't be the instrument that it's designed to be because it's not willing to work. It's got a broken part. And sometimes we get broken. We get broken through fear. We get broken through busyness. And we can't allow God to use us like He desires to use us. So I'm asking you today, as you think about this, you think about your life, are you being intentional? If not, hey, let's just think about how some way to put on your calendar, your schedule, whether you're going out, whether you're thinking about the people in your class, your workplace. I'm going to be intentional, and I'm just going to begin praying for her to see if God will open up a door for me to be intentional to share the gospel. I'm going to engage. My church goes out, and they're doing this on Saturday to go into the community. I'm going to sign up I'm going to go to this one at least, and just to kind of see how it goes. Are you invested? Do you realize how important evangelism is to the souls of other people? It's not just something we talk about. It is the eternal souls of other people that are hanging in the balance based on if you and I will be obedient to the command and be the instrument that God can use. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If this podcast has been helpful to you, please share it with a friend or subscribe to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can connect with Collegians for Christ online for more information and resources at cfccampusministry.com.